Mark Zuckerberg, in a 3-minute review this week, said, I don't just think that the Quest is the better value. I think the Quest is the better product, period. And then he talked about Apple fanboys. He said, I know that some fanboys get upset whenever anyone dares to question if Apple's going to be the leader in a new category. But the reality is that every generation of computing has an open and a closed model. And yeah, in mobile, Apple's closed model won, but it's not always that way. So Zuck guys unite. Mark Zuckerberg has officially commented on the Apple Vision Pro, and I want to know what you thought of the comments, but I'll read you a sampling of some Twitter feedback here. So Joe Weisenthal of Bloomberg says, the Zuckerberg video is really good. As a shareholder of both Apple and Meta, I wish they would collude instead of compete. But still, it's cool to see a CEO so overtly combative toward a rival. And then this is just randomly selected at Theo T3GG. Alternate angle, BlackBerry could have made a similar video about the iPhone when it dropped. And I should note, a bunch of people were comparing Zuck's comments to Steve Ballmer's comments about the iPhone. So there's a lot of fun had at Mark Zuckerberg's expense over the last few days. Documenting Meta says, why would Mark even put out this video? Let's say that it is indeed the best headset, but the product should speak for itself, not the CEO. You don't see Tim going out there putting out videos about how iPhone is better than Android. And then at Neil Seibart says, Mark Zuckerberg just posted this video to Instagram where he reviews, in air quotes, Apple Vision Pro. He says Quest 3 is better for the vast majority of things that people use mixed reality for. He later calls out Apple fanboys and says it says a lot that he felt the need to record this video. My favorite aspect of the past few days was Zuckerberg calling out Apple fanboys and then Apple fanboys immediately getting all pissy about it. So that was a lot of fun. Point. Great work all around. What did you think of what he had to say about the Vision Pro?
Well, first off, I actually kind of want to push back on this comment from Joe Weisenthal. As a shareholder of both Apple and Meta, I wish they would collude instead of compete. I don't wish that at all. Like, would the Apple Vision Pro exist in the world today in 2024 if the Quest did not? Maybe, maybe not. Or it would Meta be investing billions and billions of dollars in the Quest if they weren't frustrated and sick of dealing with Apple controlling the platforms that they exist on and wanting to control their own platform? Probably not. Like, there is
this category would not be moving forward if they were colluding. Or
well, I mean, the alternative. So the alternative take to VR is that there's a complete lack of sort of like startup energy in this space. There was in terms of Quest or Oculus, I should say, and then Facebook bought them, right? And so that was kind of a bummer. But the other question about this category and the concern that I have, I put this sort of in my review, is maybe it's just the case that the cost that's required to sort of get this off the ground is something only big companies can do. And I do worry Zuckerberg puts them, we're going to be the open alternative. There's talk in the long run, Quest will be available on hardware other than Meta's, but they have a lot of control over the app store. They're taking huge fees, like even bigger than the phone app stores. Like, so it's not like this is like the willy-nilly Windows PC sort of era. Is it going to be relatively somewhat more open than Apple? Probably. Is it sort of like what we think of when we think about open? Kind of not really. And that is an aspect where I actually wish we had more competition and sort of pushing in these directions. So in that context, I think the way to think about this video, if I were to sort of put on my, you picked up a bunch of critics here. So if I'm going to be the devil's advocate sort of to this point of view, this was a rallying cry for Meta first and foremost, which is like, no, like I think I wanted to come up here and say, sure, it's a lot better because it costs 7 times as much. Not only is it cheaper, it's actually better, sort of XYZ. And you know what? I think if you're a Meta employee or someone working on this, that is something that's compelling. If you're in that ecosystem, it's like compelling. Like, yeah, you're going to sort of have the questions. Well, of course he says that. He's sort of motivated to say it. But there's an aspect of your leader going out there and risking looking like Steve Ballmer is kind of cool, right? That yeah. Sort of going for it. And if you have sort of your executives are guided by fear of looking stupid, That's an excellent way to end up like, say, Google these days, right? So risk averse, don't want to do anything, don't want to mess up your monetization engines. So from my sort of perspective, if I were Joe Weisenthal as like a shareholder of these companies, he does say it's through an S&P index fund. I have index funds. Like, that's how I invest in these companies as well. I don't buy stocks sort of individually, but from my perspective in that context as a shareholder, yeah, great. He's out there fighting for it, and maybe it's going to fail and he's going to look stupid. But I would rather executives out there risking looking stupid because they believe in their product and they're inspiring the troops and they're going for it in competition than sort of the alternative.
Yeah. Secondly, no, I'm 100% there. Okay.
Secondly, I would say I don't think in my opinion, now again, not as a heavy BlackBerry user, to be clear, I didn't have a BlackBerry at all. I had a Nokia smartphone back in the days. I think the iPhone from day one was just drastically better than the BlackBerry. Yes, they had the keyboard and everyone loved the keyboard. They had the messaging service that, you go back and forth, but the iPhone from day one it was such a leap forward. The main response of BlackBerry was, that's fake. There's no way they actually shipped something this capable in that size with the battery technology available, the processor technology available. They didn't believe it was real. Like, just to put in context, like in this case, the Vision Pro is very clearly real. It's sort of in your hands. And I will say, from my perspective, I would, my sort of dream computer, my dream VR headset right now would be Quest with sort of the high resolution of the Apple Vision Pro, just because I think Apple's whole eye tracking, the hand thing, all that sort of stuff is super great for entertainment. Sure. And it's very frustrating in long-term usage. But again, I'm the weirdo who has 4 screens and cares about productivity, right? The controllers are kind of annoying, but they're actually nice. They talk about, the Quest is hand tracking. I think the Vision Pros is better, but like there's, it doesn't have the sort of eye tracking. I think the Pro had a version of this, but it wasn't like the UI was sort of based
he said that in his video. Yep.
Yeah. And so, I think, he was certainly sandbagging a bit away. Oh yeah, it's just like this. We have that sort of thing. It's like, well, yeah, no, not quite. But this was part of what I was trying to get at in my review of the Vision Pro. One of the things that was a little bit of a bummer for me, it's not that I think Apple screwed up. I think they made good trade-offs for what they were going towards, but I do feel like the trade-offs they made point to a long-run future where I'm not sure the Vision Pro is ever going to fully be what I want it to be. If to the extent it gets close, it's going to be basically more Mac screens in the Vision. I'm just using a Mac, right? And maybe we talked about this on Dithering last week. When we say productivity, what we mean were applications that were designed around a mouse and a keyboard. That's basically what we mean. And maybe it's always going to be a fool's errand to think that you're ever going to get a better experience with productivity applications, if that's how you're actually defining them, on any device that does not have a mouse and keyboard. It's kind of tautological, right? That's going to be the case. And what actually makes, what we call productivity in 30 years, like, where you're wearing a Vision Pro and you're fixing a car, you're fixing an appliance, you're putting up an antenna on your house, right? Maybe even Andrew Sharp can climb up his house, he has his Vision Pro on, and he's looking at it, says, put a screw here, do XYZ, right, connect this wire. That's productivity for sure. It's not something you can do with a mouse and keyboard. Is something that will be unique. Now, the other big question about this is, what access to the actual hardware capabilities do you have? And if Oculus wants to be open, I think giving more access to more aspects of the hardware, to an extent Apple won't, that could be sort of a differentiator. And if that happens, that's great. And I think it will happen because of competition.
Yeah. Well, I think the competition is exciting to see, frankly. And I don't know that any of these headsets are actually going to succeed as a product category, just because of the issues we've talked about in the past, where they're coming at a time when everyone's sort of connecting the dots on the social costs of remote work and isolating technologies and immersion and all that. So I have no idea what will or won't be adopted by a meaningful segment of the population. But as a CEO, it's really cool that Zuckerberg is willing to just jump on camera and explain why he stands behind his product and why he believes they're delivering more value to people and why he's excited for the future. Like, strategically speaking, I think positioning Meta as the plucky upstart is number one. hilarious. And number two,
they're only worth $1 trillion.
Exactly. Relative to Apple, they are plucky as ever. But I also think, he's giving the Quest the best chance possible to succeed. So if I were a Meta shareholder, I would feel good about that. And I just don't really understand the people framing this as like an act of weakness or desperation on Zuck's part. It would be much weaker and easier to just slink off and unwind the investments they've made in VR and hand the category to Apple. But I think,
what does it? I mean, why do I care if he ends up looking stupid? Right? It's not my problem. I mean, that's his problem, and I'm glad he's willing to incur the cost.
Well, and looking stupid is part of the job. It comes with the territory, taking risks, trying stuff, and occasionally you're going to look like a complete moron. But I enjoyed him mixing it up with Apple. And we'll close with Peter, who says, Andrew, can you please make fun of Ben being back on Twitter? He'll 100% regret it if he doesn't already. And I'll read at Ben Thompson, Apple Vision Pro in an economy seat is life-changing. Movie experience is a total escape. And here, the Max screen sharing makes a massive difference. Anyone flying long haul regularly, it's worth it. Absolutely worth it. That went semi-viral. So what do you say, Ben? Was Peter right? Do you already regret getting back on Twitter?